located here in Burnsville, and really the facilitator with the chamber for the HR Roundtable. And I'm really excited I know we had a lot of information. Every email you receive probably has something to do with COVID. But we also have the PPP that some of you may have been lucky enough on the first round to get proceeds, and then the responsibility with that is to hire back your employees. So there's also staffing challenges under our pandemic. With that, we have Jennifer Strand that's going to be talking to us. And just a little bit about Jennifer. Jen, she currently works as a recruitment marketing consultant for Jobs HQ, a forum communications company. In this position, she focuses on helping companies recruit, retain qualified applicants through strategic employment, advertising, and branding plans, working with companies in Minnesota, Wisconsin, North and South Dakota. She conducts regional job fairs as well as sector-specific events and HR events. Before this, she had worked for the Department of Economic Development for almost 10 years as a business services representative, consulting on all sizes of businesses in different economic climates. She continues to cultivate partnerships with community and state agencies and other educational organizations and businesses. So Jen is here, Jen Strand is here to talk about staffing challenges under a pandemic. So Jen?
Yes. Well, so far, thank you for coming to our meeting today. And we're going to go through this. This is one of the first times I've done a whole presentation on a Zoom platform. So we're going to go through, write down your questions, and at the end, we'll go through and answer the questions that you might have. So here we go. Thank you for the introduction. As Sandra said, I have done a lot of work with businesses over the last, well, almost 15 years now. And, it's been with employment law consulting, it's been with hiring and retention and different plans for all of the different climates that we enter. And doesn't it seem like, if you go back a month, we were all just, enjoying life, and then all of a sudden we're facing this unknown. And we don't know, this is uncharted territory. We don't know exactly what we're going to see, what we're going to face in the next coming weeks, but we do know that it's challenging. I wrote this presentation with a little bit of baseball in mind because it's baseball season and we don't get to enjoy the games. But, I like to always have some kind of analogy to help bring us and guide us. So we're going to be looking at developing your playbook. And developing your playbook is really your strategy of what you're going to be doing. Right now, we have businesses that are looking at hiring more. We have businesses that are looking at laying off. We have businesses that are in hiring freezes and just trying to manage what they have. So we have to do a lot of adapting as we go. I mean, some people are having all of their company rules changing. Well, it was by the minute for a while, and now I think it's at least leveled out a little bit. So some of the key points we're going to look at. We're going to look at the market where we're at. We're going to look specifically at Minnesota. We'll look at some of the metro counties. We're going to look at a little bit of retention and retention in a layoff, retention with hiring. Let's go look at the numbers. So give me a second here, and it's going to bring up the website. This is a new website or a new tool that Deed has. And this tool is very up to date. If you follow Deed at all, a lot of times you can't get the data until about a month later. So we're going to go through this a little bit. Here, I want you to take note. There's the county map, demographics, occupations. I'm going to click on each one. This data is from March 16th.
Jen, we're not seeing the website.
You're not seeing the website?
No.
Okay. Let's see here. I can, on the presentation, we can send the link out and I will tell you what the website says.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yep.
All right, since March 16th, there have been 549,910 unemployment claims in Minnesota. So that's 549,000, right? If we go to the different counties, so if we wanted to look at specifically Dakota County, there's been 45,000 applicants for unemployment. So that means 45,000 people that have claimed unemployment. Now, in those numbers, that also includes people who have been self-employed too. If we go, and I know you can't see this right now, the occupations, you can click on the occupations and then it will tell you if it is top executives, if it's engineers, if it's religious workers, if it's lawyers, media, health positions, law enforcement. So it'll tell you how many people in those occupations have opened up an unemployment claim. It will also give you the demographics. And when I'm talking about the demographics, that will give you the age, education, ethnicity, gender, all of that. And as far as gender, it's across the state, it's very, very similar. And across the state, I'm sure with the occupations you're going to see, it's not going to give you that detail, but those numbers are, I mean, they're up to date and they are projecting some growth with that. So now let me get back to the presentation here. This came from the Goldman Sachs Economic and Analyst forecast that they are projecting the job loss as a share of total private sector employment at 14.6%. And you can read what's on this slide. Now, those numbers that I gave you from that link on Deed, the numbers were around 18% or so for unemployment, for the unemployment claims. And the one thing that they were not sure about, because I called them yesterday, is that 18%, does that include the folks that were self-employed? And they weren't 100% sure. And then I also asked, you know, when we did the March unemployment rates for Minnesota, we were still in the 3 to 4%. I know April, we're going to see a huge jump. So whether it's going to be 18% cumulatively, it's 20%, but it's going to show those numbers. Definitely, you know, some alarming numbers in there just because we haven't seen that ever. If you think back, you know, 2008, 2009, 2010, we were up around 11% unemployment. And this is just something that's, you know, it's a different scenario. So keeping that in mind, let's go to retention and keeping your star players. What do I mean by that? Well, first, if you're going to be doing a layoff, you need to keep the right people. So evaluate your workforce. Think about the folks who might be able to multitask. Think about the folks that have proprietary knowledge. Think about the folks that are cross-trained. You need to be able to manage the business efficiently and work leaner. And then for that, you need the right people. So focus on those key functions, the key top performers, and then keep the door open for rehires. And when you're talking about that, you want to really have open communication with the folks that you're working with or possibly laying off. You want them to know, maybe, you know, create a group for them, communicate what's going on. If you're planning on bringing them back, I can say that, you know, Forum 2 also had to go through some furloughs and some layoffs. Some folks they are thinking about bringing back, and so they're keeping them in communication. And some folks they may not be bringing back, and we just don't know what that picture is going to look like yet. When you're looking at retention for recruitment, so a lot of times I'll give a presentation on recruitment. I've done that, you know, I've done it actually in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, in different formats, but I always like to talk about retention because if you have people that are staying at work, they're going to be your champions. They're going to be the ones that will spread the word. Hey, my company's hiring. And that's always something that we want to focus on first. We don't want, it's not, if your door is constantly rotating, we need to do something to stop that rotation. I've worked for companies that have had that. And if you start looking for what would make that door turn or what would make it stop and start fixing those things, your retention gets better and then your recruiting gets easier. So it's just something to think about. You know, every business can be a little bit different in what they do, but no, it's not always about wages. It's not always about the hire on bonus. It could be on the actual environment. It could be your managers. It could be the company culture. So recruitment and retention, that culture is really huge on getting people to stay. So I've toured so many companies, and some that have really big retention rates are recognizing their employees. They're very family oriented, where, you know what, the kids have an event or they have something going on and the company is flexible on letting the employee go do that. Now, again, every company is different on what they can do and what the scheduling is, but that's just something to think about there. If you're not sure what your why is for companies, you know, for people to stay at the company, ask your employees, what do you love about your job? Why do you stay here? Why do you come back? Maybe you're a seasonal company. Maybe you have summer employment opportunities for students, and maybe they come as a college student, they come every summer for a few years. Asking those questions are also important because it can help tell you a why that maybe you didn't see. Do they like their managers? Do you do exit interviews? If you do, that's wonderful because you can gather a lot of information that can help change any policies that might need to be changed, help implement something that might be missing. And if you don't, it's something to definitely think about doing. Focusing on the positives, of course, this is some of your whys, your pay and benefits. Now, even in a pandemic, if you are going to be posting any positions, I can tell you that any position that has a wage listed, even if you think that it's lower than your competition, any posting that has a wage listed performs better than one that doesn't. Any posting that has any of the vacation or benefits listed performs better. Now, right now, there are people that need to get to work because maybe they're not getting unemployment. I have heard some of those stories. I have heard, you know, people that just want to be working. There's some people that are working that want to change companies, but they want to know that they are able to maintain their lifestyle that they were if they were to leave this position that they're at, if that makes sense. So I can give you an example. When I was working for the state and I had actually moved, I was commuting 100 miles to my nearest office. So I was looking for something, but I loved my job. So I really didn't want to leave it. But if I'm going to leave it, I want to know that, you know, I have some benefits. I want to work out, you know, that I have a couple weeks of vacation every year. I want to make sure that I can make ends meet from where I was at. So it was something that I was looking, it was a kind of a casual job seeker. So your whys, if your whys aren't out there, I'm not going to look. Or if your whys aren't out there and if I try to find out and I can't find anything, I'm not going to look. So it's something that's there. When you're looking at your managers, when you're looking at training, if you have like a tuition reimbursement, all of those things can be wise. If you have any programs, say for veterans or for students, or maybe you have a scholarship opportunity. If people don't know about it, then it's basically you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't put it out there, they're not going to know. Put out as much as you can. If you have flexible schedules, put that out there. If you have a weekly pay, believe it or not, that can be something that people look forward to. Not everybody's great at budgeting. Again, as we address positives, address negatives. So if there's something out there, you know, a lot of people don't like the environment that we work in because we're outdoors all the time. So sometimes it's rainy, you know, are you going to be able to handle winter weather, rainy weather? Just acknowledge what the pay and benefits are. Acknowledge if they have room to move up or if they don't have room to move up. Something else to think about too, right now, are we talking about the COVID environment? I actually had a company call last week and they said, Jen, we are a nursing facility or a assisted living facility and we have COVID here. What do? We need to hire. We are in desperate need of people. And they wanted to put it out there that they have it, but also in a way to not scare people away. And so we just said, you know, COVID positive environment is one of the things that we put in there. So it's a negative, but we're addressing it. We're putting it out there. And right now we're advertising for them to find people. Being transparent, that is the communication part. And right now, more than ever, we have to communicate with our employees. Now, one thing that's not on my bio, I also manage a store. It's actually a Dairy Queen. And, you know, during these times, we've had to be just transparent about everything that we're doing. So, all right, we've got to do this because of this. We've got to wear masks because of, and I'm dealing with, I would say 90% of my workforce, it's their very first job. So it's a bit challenging, and especially it's the generation that thinks that, oh, I can go hang out with my friends. No, you can't. So there's a lot to be transparent about. And then, you know, we want to create the culture that is attracting people. So in any company, look at the generations, look at what's important to them. Right now, you know, some people are going to have kids and being able to work from home is going to be important. So again, depending on what the company is that you're working for, just always being transparent about what we can do, what we can't do, addressing the elephant in the room, whatever that is at the time. It's really important to look at your workforce needs right now. So you might be hiring right now, but in a couple of weeks, maybe not. You know, this is something that's going to be different. We don't know exactly what the economic climate is going to look like. And we don't know exactly where we're heading. So right now they're projecting more layoffs. Do we know if that's going to happen? Not necessarily, but do we expect it? Probably. How long is it going to last? Don't have those answers. You know, we're all kind of in this together, and we are all, I feel like the blind are leading the blind. And we're going to make mistakes as we go, and we're going to find some definite winning strategies too. But right now, you might be planning for hiring, but also have a plan. Be thinking about, all right, if we do have to lay off, what is this going to look like? How are we going to do it? Have some sort of plan in place so that it makes your life a little bit easier. Here's something to think about. So if you are going to have a layoff, do you have a system in place to stay in touch with employees, with seasonal employees? Now, I can speak to this a little bit just because I have a Dairy Queen. We are closed 3.5 months out of the year. I created you can create this free. It's on social media. You can create a secret group. You can invite people to a group and you can communicate through that. You may have, you know, your email. You may have different ways, but if they're on furlough, do they have their email? Do they have access? Probably not. So you might want to create some sort of system to be able to keep in touch and communicate. You may need return incentives, retention incentives, bonuses, raises, perks, you know, something to think about. There are a lot of companies still out there, a lot of healthcare specifically, that are doing incentives for your direct care staff, for your CNAs, for your LPNs, for your RNs. I know we did have different incentives for manufacturing even and other companies, which right now I'm sure they're not, but there are still different sign-on bonuses out there. Truck drivers is another good example. Just something to think about. when you want them to come back, because again, we don't know if this is going to be a month, 2 months, 3 months. We don't know if it's going to happen again in the fall. I know that we're just looking at challenging times and being able to adapt and change our playbook as we go. Form partnerships with other businesses. So I have companies that are hiring and they're calling me and asking, hey, do you know who's laying off right now? And if it's temporary layoffs, do you think that they might be able to send us some of their workers? Actually, in central Minnesota, I was working with a grocery store, and this was in the beginning when all of the restaurants first closed. The grocery store up that way had good partnerships with the other businesses, and they were giving the folks that worked at the restaurants temporary jobs at the grocery store. So something like that can also work. And ask questions. I mean, don't be afraid to call. You can call me and ask, hey, do you know any companies that are laying off, whether it's temporary or permanent? Because some of them are permanent. I'm also working with a company that planned to lay off. Oh, I want to say they announced it in January for June, and that layoff is still going to happen. And so forming a partnership with that type of business is also going to help you. And even if you're not hiring right now, but you know what they're also forecasting is a lot of companies are not going to hire right now. But as soon as this is over, everybody's going to be hiring, and it's going to be a hiring frenzy. So if you've had some of those partnerships already and have contact with some of those folks that were laid off, that might be an in to help you get those folks to your business. Something to think about there. Thinking about who you want to bring in. So I was just talking a little bit about that. Who are they? What are their skills? Where do they live? What's their background? Are they temporary positions that you're hiring for? These things are something I look at for every company that I've worked with, something that every company should look at when they're hiring. And there's probably some tools out there that you don't know exist. And one, I'm going to say the where do you live? Why does that matter? There is a tool that everybody has access to. You can ask labor market analyst. You can ask me. It's always free information. It's called a commuter shed. A commuter shed will tell you where people live, where they're driving to work. It will also tell you how many people, like in a community, are driving into that community. So for Dakota County, and I did not pull the numbers, but you may have 40% of your workforce that are driving into Dakota County. And then it'll tell you, of that 40%, maybe it's 10% that are driving 25 miles or more. Maybe it's 15%. There are some communities that have a huge percentage that are more than 50 miles. So it's something interesting. It'll tell you where to look for people. So if you're struggling on hiring, where are people willing to drive from? And in times like this, that can change. That data is put out by the US Census. It does change. They update it every couple of years. So it was updated in 2017. When you're also looking, what's their background? What can they bring to the team? Right now, when you hire, it is possible that you get a ton of applications to go through. It is also possible that you don't get very many applications to go through. That's going to have, what we're looking at is it wages? Is it the actual position? So one other thing that, we mentioned that I do events, and I just got done with a virtual job fair up in the Duluth and Cloquet area. And one company shared with me, they got just as many applicants as they did at a traditional event. And one, another one got more, another one didn't get as many. The one that didn't get as many didn't have the hire-on bonuses for the same positions that there was probably another 6 companies that did, and the wages were a little bit lower. So that was definitely, it played a part. Now, again, we have to look at the climate we're in. People are getting unemployment, plus they're getting the stimulus unemployment, which may put them over the mark of what they were making. So they may be making more staying at home. They may have kids and not have daycare, and now they're a teacher too. So it's all the way around. It's challenging, but you also have people that, I can't stay at home with my spouse and my kids. I need to be out there working. It might be time to look at different backgrounds. It might be time to look at, who can we bring in and train? And then if you have temporary position, they might be laid off from a temporary position and they're willing to take it. What else does this hiring look like? It is something that is going to be different for every company, different for every position, just different for everyone. If you can hire from different pocket of people. So like I can hire between 14 and 16. Now I don't want a lot of 14-year-olds, but there's a different pocket of people. If you can hire a different pocket of people, it will help you. If you have brought in different cultures into the workforce, you will see that it's easier to bring more people from that same culture because people have a word, the word of mouth for companies is #1 way of getting people. Just who are we targeting when we're looking? That whole list. We have already employed younger, someone with no diploma. So if you don't require a high school diploma, you can put that. I do say, for ex-offenders, let's say you are willing to hire someone that does have a background, but you must be able to pass criminal background check in your job description. That is something I would say, be careful because when you put that on, they think they can apply and then they don't. So I'm going to kind of go through this last part quickly here. Curveballs. There's a lot of different curveballs right now. Challenges at home, turnover. Some people are not going to get enough applications. Some are going to get too many. Candidate experience and branding. So your candidate experience, you want them to have a good experience, otherwise they're not going to apply again. If they have a great experience, they will apply again if they don't get the job the first time around. Tell your brand, tell your whys. That is huge, and it is going to help you find people. I've got companies that'll say, you know what, we're going to give you a $40 cell phone plan for the whole family, or we'll give you this, or we'll give you that. Make sure you're communicating that. This is what people talk about. And if your company's doing something great for the community, if they're doing something great for their workers, people talk. And people always share the positives. They always share the negatives. They don't always share the positives, but the more that you can do positives, the more that they will bring that to other people. Best media to use, everything that you can. There's a lot of free things out there to post. There are paid things out there to post. They all have a place. And I as running a business, I use everything. And that is the best advice that I can give you is use as much as you can. And really, even now, when we're in this market of are we hiring, are we not hiring, you always want to be recruiting. You always want to be looking for the diamond in the rough, because there are a lot of good people out there, and some of them are game changers, and we all need those game changers right now. So I think that Jennifer is going to open this up for questions, and please ask away.
I think Sandra is going to moderate the questions, but you can put them in the chat as well.
Are people unmuted?
Okay, Jen, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, all right, so I've got one question.
Okay.
When we were on the phone talking, you talked about your experience with Dairy Queen, but you also had some other companies contact you, larger companies that were going to be going through that layoff process. Do you want to kind of mention, well, maybe describe them? I don't know if you can give their name, but
I can. They've been in the news. So Kemp's is one that's going through layoffs. That's in Rochester, and we're looking at doing a virtual job fair in southeastern Minnesota, and so they are looking at having on that virtual job fair different tabs just for their employees. Kind of, if I can say this right, we're going to do the virtual job fair and it'll be for everyone, but then have it extended just for Kemp's employees. So that's one. I had another company call me that's hiring, and they're looking, okay, what are all the companies, they're hiring all over Minnesota. What are all the companies that you are looking or working with that are laying off, whether it's temporarily, and can I talk to their HR? Can you help me connect with them? That particular company, they are nationwide, but they have their family in Italy, and that family in Italy has the same types of companies over there. So they've kind of gotten a little bit of advice from, overseas where it's kind of hit first. So they're able to, all right, how can we be proactive? What's the biggest difference that we can make? There's different things that we can do as companies, as HR, and learn from each other. And that's huge. Does that answer your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we have a question from Courtney. Let's see, have you found that businesses are exploring other options such as furloughing or salary reduction or layoffs?
Yes, actually.
Talk about what you've seen.
Yes.
As actually salaried, all of those. I'm assuming you have seen, because I've seen them in my practice. So why don't you kind of go through what you've experienced?
So some of the companies are doing furloughs where they're going to be calling people back for sure. Some companies are offering their employees, we can either furlough you until December, this is a real example, or you can do a salary reduction until December and do this. So they're giving them some choices. And again, every business is different. Each industry is different. That particular industry was the healthcare industry where they were saying, pay cuts until this time or furlough until this time. And again, we just don't know exactly what's going to happen here. I'm working with companies at the Mall of America that they have to pay rent and they're trying to maneuver their way through. Some of them were able to get some of those loans, and some of them, the money was out. And so there's some hard decisions out there too. But it's really a mixed bag when I look at that, and the calls that I'm getting, I'm still getting a lot of calls for advertising. We had about 38 companies at the virtual job fair up in Cloquet, Duluth. I'm working on one for Eagan and the Metro. I'm working on one for Southeast Minnesota. I've got one going for Red River Valley starting tomorrow. Red River Valley is, Moorhead, Thief River, Grand Forks, Fargo, that whole area. So it's really a mixed bag. I do have companies that are also advertising that aren't hiring right now. They're advertising, we're going to be looking to hire in June. And some of that was construction. They're forecasting that they're going to be bringing people on in June. And again, every company is different.
So even with the PPP funds, when people get them, then their strategy changes because you need to, if you look at your February 15th payroll then you have to have, that's kind of our target, February 15th. What was your payroll at that time? And
yes,
the date that, at least in our organization, we did lowered hours for one brand new hire that was in training, and so they could get unemployment, and then brought them back the date that PPP check was deposited. We needed to restore anybody that had a reduction of hours.
yes.
Okay, looks like we have another question here. What can you ask when checking references?
What can you ask when checking references? You can ask if they would rehire. You can ask what their last wage was. You can ask, I don't have my own book right here, but you can ask a lot of questions. You can't say, why, what were they like when they worked for you? You can't ask any of those questions. And a lot of times companies will have a number for you to call, and the person will say, yep, this is their last day of employment. This was their wages, and that's it. They won't even answer, would you rehire? But you can ask that.
And it looks like Jim is unmuted. He might have a question. So Jim,
Okay.
Question? I'm not sure if Jim can hear me, but. All right, do we have any other questions? Well, Jen, thank you so much for talking about just hiring and the whole employee field during this pandemic, and bringing them back, or reduction of hours or unemployment. And you know, the people that are recruiting is, you know, they have a great opportunity. But you know, at least in my industry, I can't even imagine hiring people. We've had to kind of do the opposite a little bit of reduction hours, remote employees, etc. But
Yes.
thank you for being on the Zoom meeting today. And then also just a quick reminder, we do have on May 26th, we have an employee wellness. Well, if we need an employee wellness session, we might have to change that topic from Health Source Solutions. We'll have Jill Duvall speak at that time. So Jennifer, I'm going to give this back to you.